My name is Corey. I'm one of the founders at Gravwell. This is not a sales pitch. This is a tools thing where we're going to talk about something that we give away for free, which is the Gravwell Community Edition, which you can get to at gravwell.io/Gravwell Community Edition. I'm going to start with the where it is and what it is, and then I'll show you the tool itself. I'm a practitioner, spent a bunch of years at Department of Energy. I used to do vulnerability research before founding the company because I got sick of nobody ever catching us. So then we do log analysis. That's pretty much what we do. And the fastest way to say that we do what we do is to say we're a Splunk alternative built from scratch, and then we have a community edition, which is totally free. If you apt install Gravwell, it will give you 2 GB per day of log ingestion. And you don't even have to talk to us at all. Use our Debian repo, apt install Gravwell, you're off to the races immediately. And that is 100% free for personal use. And then if you fill out a form, we will give you a license for 50 GB per day of data ingestion for free for personal or commercial use. And if that limit isn't enough, you now have my contact information and we can fix that for you for whatever. Because we do, as a company, we specialize in medium to large enterprises. And so shitloads of data is sort of our bread and butter. But the community edition is really nice for classes, hands-on labs for log analysis type things. And that's basically kind of what I'm going to demo or show off in terms of what we can do. I am a little disappointed, and I apologize that I was hoping to pull up my own home lab. So I'm going to talk about some of my use cases that I do at home, but I wasn't able to remote in and because of some networking things and my laptop isn't hooked up. So I'm going to use our just general demo environment instead to show off how you might use some things as we go and there. But it's this community edition button in the top is how you get to it, and then that will take you to the form that lets you fill up. So here's what I'm talking about with the 50 gigs today for the advanced or 50 gigs per day of log ingestion. And again, that is totally fine for commercial use as well. So if you've got customers or you do that and you're not doing very much data, then that's perfect for that. Otherwise, you can also follow along if you want in a demo environment. If you go to demo.gravwell.io/demo/new, that'll drop you into the live environment that I'm going to use to poke around it. So if you want to follow along or whatnot, that's there. It's pre-populated with some data to dig into some things. But I'm going to talk about it mostly from the really low level. I think one of the things I really like about Wild West Hackin Fest is we're for the most part a bunch of super nerds who are just and we like command line for things, right? So let me just make sure that there's actually data in here. All right, cool. So Gravwell fundamentally is a log analysis platform, and logging is sort of boring, but that's okay. We're all about that. Make logging boring again. Especially when it comes to this space, the reason that I say we're a Splunk alternative, not an Elastic alternative, is because I think there's two sort of fundamentally different approaches to the problem. So for home lab use and community edition use, I really like the approach that Gravwell and Splunk have to the problem, which is you dump data in and you ask questions later, right? So it doesn't matter if that data is malformed or ugly or not parsed or whatever. You can dump the data in and then you kind of sort through it later. So anything that exports to syslog or whatnot, right? You just point that at a Gravwell ingester or a syslog receiver is another way to say that, and that's going to get the logs in. So that's kind of what's happening here. So right here, I've got syslog that's coming in, and when I say I'm just going to talk about search because that'll give you an idea about whether you want to look at this or not as a tool. And probably it'll only take 5 to 10 minutes for you to figure out, yeah, I want to try this in my home lab or not. But there, so if I say tag equals syslog, that's essentially sort of a source type equals or, right? I'm asking Gravwell, just dump my logs out in their raw format, unparsed. But you can see, I can click an IP address and I can pivot over to another data source. Like I want to open up a Zeek DNS client investigator or something. Clicking on those and doing that, I'll talk about that in just a sec. But even completely unparsed, ugly, broken logs, you might still want to do stuff with. And so even though it's unparsed right now, you can still click on things and pivot around. And I'll talk about that in just a second. But ultimately, the Gravwell search syntax is very Linux command line-esque. So this is also kind of a nice thing for people doing home lab stuff. Hopefully you've got some Linux component in it, or even if you're just good at PowerShell. Gravwell search syntax should be quasi-familiar in that sense. So like if I do something like grep for forward utilize, some of these are made-up generated data. So that's one of the reasons why I was really hoping to get in my own environment. But okay, whatever. It was something like this, right? Yeah, okay. So like grep does what grep does. It searches for specific things. And similarly, individual modules within Gravwell also support things like switches. So anybody know what -v does on a grep? Nope, not verbose. With grep, usually it's verbose. With grep, it is invert my logic. So instead of matching things that have forward utilize in them, it removes it instead, and you only see things that don't have it in it, right? So Gravwell has a lot of these really low-level tools, kind of the old school way of digging through logs, right? That's what we're sort of all about, but doing that at scale and being able to bring in stuff from all over the place. So that's what this does. But then, and it's really nice to get started because, again, you just dump in the logs. But then through the search syntax, you parse out those logs, and at search time is when you apply structure for things. So if I come in here and I say syslog, app name, host name, message, yeah, and then pipe that into a table, what I'm essentially asking Gravwell to do now is parse this according to RFC 5424, which is a syslog spec that almost nobody follows, by the way. If anybody's done log analysis, you're going to be aware of that, right? Parse this according to those things, and then put it in a table for me. So here I go from, now I start to apply structure on things, and I start to be able to take the raw data and turn it into something that, as a human, I'm interested in kind of poking through or whatever. So, and then it's through this system and piping these modules together that you can start to answer interesting questions completely on the fly, more like commoditized data science type things, right? So if I was interested in saying maybe what are the different apps that is sending syslog to me, as an example, right? So I might come in and I say stats count by app name, and then let's chart this. Chart count by app name, which should get us a chart of the different apps that are sending data in, which in this environment is pretty much all DNS mask. So a chart is not a great visualization for this, but this is sort of the point, is I can do a table of app name and count to say, just give me the actual values. So in the demo environment here, I'm only pulling syslog. At my home, or DNS mask, sorry. At my home lab, I'm pulling in DNS mask. I'm pulling in access point or logs from my Ubiquiti Wi-Fi access points. Anybody got those? They're a perfect example of syslog that isn't syslog, because Ubiquiti says it's syslog, but it is not. And it has JSON kind of embedded within it. So that's a really great example of, because with Gravwell, you don't have to just parse once. You can, right, if I'm going to use a regex or something to extract out particular elements to this, and then I want to use those, which, anybody, raise your hand in here if you like regular expressions. Anybody? All right. Usually people start throwing tomatoes at me when I ask that question. So that's how I know I'm in the right place. Because yes, regular expressions are, if you're doing log analysis, one of my prime advices for anybody getting into the field or whatever, is learn regular expressions. If you can get good at regular expressions, everyone thinks you're a wizard, and they give you all kinds of presents so that you will use your magic on them. Because as an example, right, if I wanted to just pull out reply, and then use name grouping to say domain for like this, and then what do we do? Is, and then an IP as an example. Right, so let's see if I did that right with a regex on the fly. All right, cool, I did it. So as an example, right, Gravwell gives you these low-level tools as well. So if your logs are complete shit, and which happens a lot, you can still get in and do all kinds of stuff. So if I've set this now, and I say, maybe this is the only way to properly crack this out, and I say, all right, here's my parser. Gravwell is a platform tool, so it has a whole bunch of stuff in it. But where I can set parsers ahead of time is in what we call our auto-extractors or whatnot. So this is where I'd come in, and we have a bunch configured in here already. But this is where you go and you set what those might be. So if I open this up, it says, yeah, on my Zeek syslog tag, I have these fields in it. They're separated. It's using tab separated values type of thing. That's where you can kind of go and define these types of things. And then to go back to my previous example, I'm just going to roll the dice and assume that that's installed in here. Then I could do something like what we call AX. Oh, dang, I don't. I rolled the ones on the dice. Let's do Zeek. What was that one that I just said? Zeek syslog as an example. Let's see if there's any actual events. Okay, there's no events in the system, but you can see the table that has the fields, right? So this is how you define fields within Gravwell is via the auto extractors or whatnot, because everything is parsed on the fly. And actually, we can install one probably, because in this demo environment, so if I click this field extractor, so this axis, we call them axes, but AX stands for auto extractor. So in this example, again, I'm just kind of in a demo environment. I press the auto extract button, and then Gravwell will give you a confidence level of what it thinks it is. So here I say, okay, this is probably syslog. So let's just go ahead and save that. So now we have an auto extractor set. So then if I do this, I should get, yeah, all the fields that are in syslog. So while I did regex and everything, that's because that's what I really like, and I always want to get more low level, and Gravwell lets you do that. But this is an example of, okay, this is a common data format or whatever. Let's just break this out. You know, give it to me out of the box without me having to write the search to do it or whatnot. And once you set up the auto extractor as well, that's where you can get some of these like GUI type things. So I clicked what we call the data explorer over here. This is what opens up a panel that shows me the different fields, and then I can click and it'll help me build up my query. So I can say equal to DNS mask, and that's going to start to set the query, and then I can run search and see some of those results. But the search system is sort of fundamental to everything that Gravwell does. It's sort of the point of the thing. If you put your logs in one spot, it's because you want to search them or analyze them. And every search within Gravwell is, or every visualization or dashboard tile or anything you see like that is a search. So if I pull up and let's see what kits are even installed. So kits are, and everything I'm showing you is 100% in the free version, everything, right? Like none of this is limited. There's a couple enterprise features like high availability and stuff like that are for paying customers, not community edition, which also doesn't make sense because it's a single indexer, so you wouldn't do that anyway. But everything I'm showing right now is you can do this right now for free in your own stuff. That's the point. So let's see if we have any sysmon data as an example. So I'm definitely taking sysmon at home, which if you're not doing, highly recommend, totally free. Sysmon's phenomenal for any Windows systems that you have. It will do things like log every single process that's created. Or one of the things that's really tough with Windows is DNS logging typically. And I was showing logs in syslog from my DNS mask provider, right? So that's one way to get those logs. But if you don't have that, then sysmon is another way, where it will collect DNS from your endpoints. Dang, I don't have any sysmon data in here, unfortunately. But so the way that Gravwell works is, again, the searches and the low-level stuff that I showed you, but kits are kind of apps that you put on top. So if you have sysmon and you install the sysmon kit, then you get a bunch of out-of-the-box analysis for sysmon for things. So it comes with some dashboards, comes with some example queries for stuff. So we have like 48 searches as an example. Microphone time by application. You want to freak yourself out. Put sysmon on your boxes and then use this search to see which of them turn your microphone on and then turn it off. And that's fun or not fun, depending on what type of things you think are running or not. But that's an example of an out-of-the-box search. So, I mean, let's even take a look at this because I want to hammer this point home. Searches are how things are done in Gravwell. And so it's really flexible that way. So if I pull this up, here is the search that generates the end result of, is my mic on or not? So let's just walk through this for fun because it'll help understand the art of the possible a little bit. But I apologize if you're maybe new to this and you're not as familiar with kind of this type of thing. But in this example, we're chaining these modules together. So we're taking a look and we're using the winlog module to parse out our fields. And then something like a sort to make sure that we're dealing with things in a time ascending manner. That's probably superfluous in this case because Gravwell is a time series index first. That's what it does. Time is the primary key. And then we have a bunch of additional layers on top. That's sort of our secret sauce because, yeah, we wrote our whole database from scratch. That was important to be able to solve this problem in the way that we wanted to. We tried a couple other things like Elasticsearch and InfluxDB even, or Prometheus and some other stuff, and it just didn't cut the mustard when it came to what we wanted to do. And that's because we wanted to be able to do everything that I'm sort of showing now, right? Then we use regex to extract a few things. We're going to use a diff module to look at the difference between two things. So we're looking at the difference of timestamp between these based on these keys, based on the tuple of computer and app name. And then looking for specific property or a match of this property. So this is basically just saying, yeah, is the mic action field that we extracted, we call them enumerated values, is the mic action enumerated value equal to stop? And then we just do some stats kind of like a symbol showed. And so that's where you get to a final chart of, yeah, here's the apps that are opening this up. And again, I apologize that I couldn't remote into my home lab where I got all this stuff. But let's talk a little bit about how data gets fed in. So docs.gravwell.io. We don't hide any documentation or anything like that. All that's available for people paid or not for things. So if I go to, there's a quick start guide, and this is absolutely where you should start if you're doing community edition. Follow the quick start guide, and it's going to take you through some stuff. But right now I want to talk about ingesters a little bit. So ingesters, right, one of the challenges of getting data into a centralized environment is, it comes in all kinds of different formats, right? Something exports a syslog, something else writes to a flat file, something else uses Amazon SQS to give me my stuff or whatnot. So that's where the ingesters come in. And these are all open source for us. We publish all these things. This is not how we try and make our money as a company or anything. And so this is kind of a data pipeline or a data broker type thing that you can use, even if you didn't want to feed Gravwell with it, but that's the default. So like so the default service for catching syslog is called Simple Relay, which is sort of similar to like a simple forwarder or a universal forwarder from Splunk. But Windows events is one, since we're talking about Sysmon specifically. Windows events is an example where if you're doing Windows event forwarding, here's another audience participation question. Anybody get WEF working? Anybody actually use Windows event forwarding? Okay, awesome. That's more than I typically see as well. So I think this is indicative of the quality of folks who attend this conference, because it sucks. Did anybody enjoy that, or does anybody disagree with me that it sucks? Okay, perfect. So it sucks. So Windows event forwarding is bad. But, with Gravwell, we have an agent that you can install on your Windows system, extremely lightweight. All it does is ask the operating system, hey, you got any logs? And the operating system says, yes, here you go. And then it ships them. That's all it does. Especially out of the box. It does have some pre-processing capabilities for people who are power users, but for the most part, that's what it does, which is what you want for that. And if you are doing forwarding, then you only need to put the agent in one spot where you've got the logs forwarded to. But if you're not doing forwarding, then like at home, my kids all have gaming machines that are Windows machines. So they've all got Sysmon on there, and they've got the Gravwell agent, and then it's sending back to the home environment. So, which is pretty fun, by the way. Like, so I'll talk a little bit about my use cases at home. Because I'm actually just going to go to the index, or like the topology, I'll just put this up on the screen. I'll talk about this a little bit. So in Community Edition, the indexer and the web server and everything is squished to kind of one component as far as, and that is this UI, here when you're doing stuff. But at home, yeah, I'm grabbing Sysmon from all the Windows machines. I'm grabbing Ubiquiti access point logs. And so I've got a dashboard at home that tells me when my kids are, like when their phones are on the Wi-Fi, right? And I do that by, okay, I know their MAC addresses and stuff, and then I have a little lookup table. And we have a module called the lookup, would be Mac 2 phones, right? I think it's called this at home, Mac 2 phones. And then I look up the MAC address to kid name type of thing, right? And so this module by itself will enrich my my Ubiquiti data with names about whose phone it is, right? So you can do cool stuff like that. So I know if somebody's joined the Wi-Fi or not. I know when my kids are playing Switch at 2 in the morning when they're not supposed to be, which, Nintendo gives you those types of things, but it's way creepier if I don't use Nintendo and more fun. So like kids playing at 2 in the morning, I'm like, hey, how'd the game go last night when you're supposed to be, right? And, but that's the kind of thing you can do when you have, when you've got this telemetry coming in, right? Which is the really fun part about it. I actually gave a talk at, anybody familiar with the S4 conference? It's like an OT cybersecurity conference in Miami, put on by Dale Peterson, really fun conference. But I gave a presentation this last bit as a backup talk where my wife is a horticulturalist, and it's a little bit of a story, but it's fun. And at her work, she plants tulips every time in the fall, because this is how you do tulips. If somebody didn't know, you plant them in the fall, and then they overwinter, and then they come up in the spring. But they've been putting this like nasty straw mulch on the top of the tulips and things. She's like, I don't think that needs to get done. So I think this is pointless. And I'm like, well, let's do some science. Maybe let's get this in here. So I set up a bunch of Raspberry Pis and some one-wire just temperature sensors and things, and we broke a bed up, right? And then we ran an experiment. But I collected that data into Gravwell. Like every second I took a temperature reading for 9 months. I took a temperature reading every second, and then brought that into Gravwell. And then by the time it was done, right, I got to show really cool charts, because essentially what we were doing for that syslog example, where, you know, what's the chart of the most common things? I was doing that for those temperature values or whatnot, right? So we had big spikes for the different beds of one with straw on it, one that wasn't uncovered, you know, different depths of tulip planting or whatnot. And it was really cool at the end to just be able to, here's a search that gives me this type of visualizations. And that's what I mean when I say, like, this is not just log analysis, it's not just cybersecurity, it's commoditized data science, right? I didn't have to write code to do the analysis and build my chart. I just wrote a search to do it, which is there. And then exporting data from this is really easy. You can download the results as different things. I wonder if let me see if this is in here. Do we have any of this? Dang it. We also collect NetFlow data and PCAP. Let's see if there's PCAP in here. I doubt it, because that would be a little silly. But at home, I am doing packet captures. I have it limited only to ARP, because just in case, I guess, right? So I'm doing packet captures. I've got Zeek data at home, and we have out-of-the-box things for a lot of these. So between Zeek data, and all this is free, right? So Gravwell's free, Zeek is free for network telemetry if you give it a span port, and then we actually publish, no, I don't want to make Chrome faster. Gravwell, Docker, Zeek. So we also publish Docker containers and stuff too. So we have a pre-configured Zeek container with a bunch of base Zeek scripts plus some other ones as well. So like you can use this and then follow this and point it to your Gravwell instance, and you've got network telemetry. You install Sysmon. Has anybody played with Sysmon for Linux? Anybody done that? Did you know that Sysmon for Linux existed? It's actually kind of cool, but it outputs XML, so that part sucks. But it does the same stuff that it does for Windows. Every process that executes, every file created and deleted, and the Linux admins are probably cringing at that one because literally everything is a file. So that one you have to turn off. That one's you probably don't want that data. But yeah, every process executed. So if you and the nice part is if you've got that, then you can kind of normalize that data because you've got Sysmon from your Windows endpoints, Sysmon from your Linux endpoints, and so you kind of get used to that data source. Right, but if you have an EDR like a CrowdStrike or something like that, that data can come in too. But what I do in my home lab, which all of these components are free again, I do Zeek, Sysmon. I'm getting DNS mask from my Linux router, which I hand built, and I'm getting ubiquity access point logs. I'm getting energy. I have a little. I bought something that clamps onto my power thing, so I'm monitoring power at my breaker. I have that feeding in. My co-founder Chris, he has celiacs, so but he really likes beer, so he started brewing his own beer, and he's got the kegerator hooked up to feed data into Gravwell as well. So he gets alarms if the kegerator, like he was making a logger and his power went out, and it's like, hey, Gravwell gave him an alarm to his phone because the kegerator temperature exceeded a certain value. I want to talk about that piece. I don't want to, because this is, again, included in the community edition. No, I want out of the kit. We have an automation component completely available to anybody. So this is where you do things like, okay, I've got a search that tells me something. In Chris's example, his search was, look at the temperature and an eval that was like, if temperature exceeds X degrees, right? So he wants that search to be empty. And then he has an automation that says, if the search is not empty, send me an email. So it's that type of thing. And this is kind of the WYSIWYG like automation component. All this is included as well. This is not an upsell or anything like that. Community edition users get this. And you can do all kinds of complicated, crazy stuff. This is a nerdy audience, so I'll tell you kind of a story. the engineer who was in charge of building this component, his name is Fritz. I was like, hey man, can I just get like a Hello World demo because I want to show somebody? And he goes, yeah, sure. And he goes, yeah, but that was, he comes back, it's taken him a while. I'm like, Fritz, you're a smart guy. What's taking so long with this Hello World demo? And he goes, well, Hello World was way too easy. It was basically like one node, and so it was super boring. So he made this system is fully featured enough and Turing complete that he made a MIPS emulator in this flow system to print Hello World because he's a psycho. I don't know. He's that type of guy. And I love him. But so this is insanely flexible in terms of the things that you might want to do within your home environment, right? If you know, we have a command palette over here with a bunch of different stuff. That's where you, I have read-only access to this flow. That makes sense why I can't see the command palette. Because we do support a bunch of those things. I wonder if I can, let's just create a new one for examples. Yep, we got a question. Yeah, it's kind of a SOAR light, right? It's definitely not as full featured as like a Tines or a swim lane or a, you know, something that's, you know, actually that's all they do. But yeah, it gets you 80, 90% of the way there. So this is an example of kind of that query alert style. And so I picked to begin from a starter flow. So this would be like, yeah, I've got a search that tells me something. And then I'm going to say, if the results are greater than 0, which is to say the nominal case is this search has no results. So this is your classic, like, yeah, I want to look for malicious domains, known malicious domains in my environment. You'd want that search to be empty. But if it's not empty, then we're going to self-ingest it. I'm going to put it in a text template and email it to myself. I might also be interested in, you know, maybe instead of email, I want to integrate with a ticketing system or something. And so I'm going to use a webhook. Or I want to do something weird. And so I want to run Go directly from in here or whatnot as an example. Thanks for the time, and hopefully this is helpful.